Welcome to We Hear Her. I am Erin Trenbeth Murray.
And I am Jennifer Bean.
We're here today with another amazing woman who's sharing her story and insights to lessons learned.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining the We Hear Her podcast. I'm Jennifer Bean, and I'm here today with Robin Ritch, who is the president and publisher of Deseret News Publishing Company. Did I get that right?
You did.
You got a good title.
Yeah.
Tell us what that means.
That means that I am running Deseret News, which is a 170-year-old newspaper that we've actually shifted in the last year to be more about not just a newspaper. We shifted to a weekly newspaper, and we're really more online. And we also launched a national magazine. So I have a lot of publishing under me. I also have the church news, as well as Utah Business Journal is also part of our media.
Your umbrella.
And it's really been quite the ride. I'm fairly new at Deseret News, and I'm actually fairly new in media. My background is tech. And executive in tech. And, I started out at Microsoft and then Intel and did startups and then Cisco. And so I've done all these different kind of tech executive roles. And now I'm in media.
And crazy how all of those roles, I'm sure, have prepared you for what you're doing today. You know what I'm curious about is I used to get the Sunday paper all the time, read it without fail. Tell me sort of the status of the old newspaper and how that's affecting your business and how news gets to us.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a lot of change in the media organizations in the nation and even worldwide. But when it comes to newspapers, there is a segment of people that really still like to get the newspaper mostly on Sunday and sit around and take the time to read it. The majority of people, and actually our business model is really, hey, we want to get people to read online. And so for example, for Deseret News, we have upwards of almost 20 million a month unique visitors. So,
wow.
So obviously the state of Utah doesn't have 20 million people. So about 75% of our readership is outside the state of Utah. And so one of the things we're trying to do is, and I'll talk a little bit about the media. There is quite a division in the media right now. There's a huge polarization in our country, but there's also a huge polarization in the media. And I'm not sure which came first, but
right.
Something has happened.
Something shifted, and I'm responding.
Yes. And so part of that is with social, a large segment of the population, certain demographics and certain genders are receiving most of their mail through social. So I'm reading posts that come to me through Facebook.
Sure. So and that is now our news.
Yeah, that is our news. But the challenge with that is it's a little bit of an echo chamber. You're only going to get served up things that you and your friends like. So you're only going to hear the same things that you most likely have already heard.
Which makes me think, is that how we're remaining polarized?
Yes. Sort of, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem because for example, and this is a strange example, but I was in my office at Deseret News on January 6th. And in my office, I have a big monitor that has 4 different news stations, national or international news stations at the same time. So it was January 6th where there was that incident at the Capitol in the United States. And I had four different news stations, up next to each other with the graphics going across.
Right.
And it was like 4 different events were happening.
That is
it was so crazy. And I was sitting there like shocked by the whole experience.
Right.
But then realizing that depending on which station I chose to watch, I was going to have a different experience and have different graphics and different characterizations of what was happening, which is really kind of a little frightening.
I was just going to say that's quite scary. It makes me think a lot more than twice about what news I'm going to watch in the evening.
Right. Well, and I actually think being able to get different sources is important because for me, like that day, I'm like, okay, somewhere in the middle of this is what's really happening.
Right.
But it was actually important for me to understand what different potentially polarization places are actually saying and their narratives.
Right.
So that I could each figure out what's actually happening around me and how different people are thinking. Like if you don't actually know what other people are thinking is
and perceiving, right?
Yeah,
because it's one thing to put it out there, and then it's one thing to perceive what you're hearing.
It's a really interesting dynamic right now. And so one of the things we're doing at Deseret News is we came out with a national magazine. I should have brought you one. So sorry.
I know. I'll swing by. I would like one.
It's not one in my, I have so many, and actually I just grabbed 10 to bring to someone else, and I didn't bring it here. Anyway, we have a national magazine where we have mostly national writers, and what we're actually trying to do is be a platform that's center right-ish. So in the media right now, there is no media organization that's center right. Mostly from a national perspective, mostly it's farther right.
Yeah, and then farther left.
But there's center left. There's some center. The left side has a lot more on their
continuum.
Yeah, they do. On the right, it's like
black or white.
Yeah. So we are trying to take this spot in the center, and we have a lot of national writers writing for us on the magazine to try and give perspectives that are kind of in the center and be a platform. There's a huge swath. This is what's scary. There's a huge swath in our country that are kind of in the center, but they're having the same experience I had on January 6th, where am I getting my news? Like, I kind of want the middle.
Should I believe?
Yeah, well, I want the middle. Like, I have to figure it out myself. And so that's what we're really trying to do. And it's been really interesting to come out in the middle of COVID with the magazine, and we didn't really launch it. We just started shipping it. And because we're like, we don't know if this is really going to happen. And it's been amazing, the different people that have written for us and how much traction we've gotten and how much feedback we've gotten nationwide, because there isn't anyone trying to serve this group of people in the center.
Sure.
So that's the thing that keeps me up. I in my mind picture that experience I had on January 6th, and I just think, whoa.
Everybody's having this experience.
But if you're only getting your news on Facebook, you're not getting the 4. You're just getting one. And you don't know that it's just one view.
Right.
So it's a little freaky.
So is the magazine sort of your way and your concept of bridging that gap and seeing if you could find that center right ground?
Yes.
Is that where Utah is also, or how does this state
so
play
it's
into
really
that?
interesting. Utah, and I'll characterize this, though there's a lot of different ways people characterize Utah, but typically Utah is known for being conservative but pragmatic. So, which isn't the same as so that's where the center right comes. So Utah pioneered LGBTQ. Why can't I think of it? Legislation.
Gotcha.
Immigration is another one. Pioneering. So although they're conservative, Utah's considered conservative, they tend to come up. Another one is climate change. So thinking about conservations, they typically don't. They're conservative, but Utah tends to come up with a pragmatic solution. Which typically the solutions come in the middle. So it's a big, do you know what I'm saying? Like in the middle is where you end up getting a solution. But if you only have far right and far left speaking,
you think you've already arrived at the solution.
So you don't have a way to have a conversation and try and figure out, we're 80% on the same page. It's just this 20% we're not.
Sure.
If you can have that in the center, but you can't necessarily have it on the far end.
Right.
It's pretty hard, right? They're just different.
Utah is perceived that way? I think sometimes inside the state, we get very polarized.
Yeah,
and think
inside it's definitely polarized.
Yeah, and think that everybody sees us as we see ourselves. And I think about how that perception is.
I think it's been interesting for us as we've started to really talk more to national outlets and national people. It's less that I feel like it's less that it's an unknown. And we Deseret News, like I have spoken to tons of people on both coasts saying, hey, we represent kind of not the coast. We're from a Western view with not the coast. And there's a lot of people that think this way. And it really resonates. When you have some of the people we've had write for the magazine and their experiences with us, they are like, oh, yeah, you're in the center. This is great. Yeah. We have nowhere else to go for that. So I think, I don't know what the overall perception is. My experience has been, they're like, oh, okay, this is great. Like almost like they didn't have one didn't know.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like from a Deseret News perspective, we have been, for 170 years, a newspaper of record for this area and haven't really made a huge effort to be national and kind of take these conversations on a national level.
On a bigger platform.
And so by doing that and saying, hey, there's a huge swath of the country that thinks like this, and there is. It's not just Utah. There's a big swath. And we're kind of trying to represent and have a forum people are really interested in talking to that swath because that's where they figure out the solutions can be made, which is a huge deal, right? It's a really huge deal.
Especially right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what are some of the things that you think Utah is learning in this transition? And what is Deseret News and publishing? Yeah,
it's an interesting time. One of the things that there's a little bit, well, I could talk about polarization within Utah a lot, because on a daily basis, I get emails or letters that say one thing, like, you're too liberal, and then the same amount that say you're too conservative. So it's really an interesting mix. When I first came in, I had quite a few reputable third parties, do an analysis of Deseret News to say, where do we fit on the political spectrum?
Right.
And we fit. All third parties say we fit center right. What's interesting is the goalposts have moved so far out on both sides, so that when you're looking in, you're like, whoa, if you're on either far end.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's really think of it that
that's
way.
What's also happened. So it's been an interesting experience coming into that. So I think there's a polarization. I think on the thing that I've noticed, at least with business, and I come from tech, and I live, I've lived in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto forever. So one of the things that I think is interesting with Utah is people that are not representing, in a political perspective, but just, have a platform to represent Utah, whether from business or whatever. I think sometimes people are forgetting the really uniqueness of Utah and what got it to be this economy that's so great.
Yeah.
And instead of highlighting and celebrating that and all the legacy companies and people that have really built that up, I think sometimes we tend to forget about that and say, hey, but we need to be like this and like this and like this.
Right.
And I think we really should just celebrate how the uniqueness has brought Utah to where it is, and then add on top of that. And I think there's some elements of people that have kind of forgotten that it's cool.
Sure.
There's really uniqueness to here, and we really should highlight that.
What's your favorite one? I know you've recently are making the transition to Utah.
I think people will say like the recreation and things like that, but I think one of the things that's really interesting in Utah when it comes to business, I think that people are this is a highly educated workforce, but there's also a kind of a work-life, recreation family balance in Utah that you don't necessarily find where I live, where I've lived in Palo Alto. That's not something you would find.
Right.
But the thing is these companies are still really successful here in Utah. So somehow people have figured out, hey, we can actually be a whole person, like be a real person and have work be part of my life, and still the company's successful. So I think that's a really big deal.
Oh, I love that's where we're at. Because that's what I'm personally trying to accomplish, right? Not be too far one way or the other.
It's really hard.
And not dive too deep into work and forget about my family. Do you have a family that's moving to Utah with you?
No.
Just you. You're pioneering on your own.
Yes.
Oh, I love that for you. That's so exciting. What's on your bucket list?
In life?
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny when I think about that. Early in my life, I lived abroad and I traveled abroad. So I hit 100 countries before I was 35 or something, some crazy thing.
Before you even knew you needed a bucket list.
Yeah, before that.
You're I crossed it off.
Yeah, so now so whenever I think of traveling, it's I don't have a bucket list. I think my bucket list is more internal, more can I be better at serving people around me? Can I find ways to help others that need whatever help they need, if it's in their career or if it's in thinking about how to be a woman in a career and moving forward or whatever it is. I don't know, I kind of ended up getting rid of the bucket list of going and doing stuff. And now I'm how do I use my abilities and shine my light on other people and also learn from other people. I love learning from other people. That's my favorite thing. It's so fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
I love the challenge to myself every day to be curious, right? To learn something new. And what was your favorite decade? Or maybe you're not that old.
No,
maybe should we say 5 years?
My
and why? Tell me why.
Favorite decade. I hate to say this, but I'm sure now looking back we all say this. But in my 20s, after
things were a lot better than I thought they were.
Yeah, exactly. I never had to worry about what I was wearing. But no, I actually think it was because I, did my undergrad and I went to work for Microsoft and then got my MBA and was working in tech. And it was a really fun time where I worked. It was a really fun time. I learned a ton. I was given a lot of responsibility. Now looking back, I'm like, wow, what in the world were they thinking? But, and then at the same time, I was super into outdoors and into mountain biking and into doing all these skiing, doing all these fun things. And also, I was mentored. I think mentoring too is a big deal. And during that time period, I was mentored by some incredible people and had the chance to learn who I was. I think your 20s, you kind of start figuring out like, who am I?
You're
and
like,
what matters to me.
My choices make a difference in how I'm shaping my life.
It's so interesting. I was thinking about, I was thinking about that just this morning about how some of the people I know that the choices they made on a partner in their earlier 20s, like really impacted their lives for good or bad.
Sure.
And they didn't even really know who they were. And so you're like, I mean, the person, like I made a choice when I don't even know
when
who
I was 20.
Yes.
And is that the choice I would make now? Is there anything that you would change about your journey?
That's such a great question. And I think what I would change is more my attitude of no one would say I have any patience. Like no one would say that about me.
Do you think you have patience, or you're like you're absolutely right?
No, I do now. I feel like I do now, but it's a comparison to me earlier. So still, people would look at me and say I don't have patience. But I can say, oh, well, you didn't know.
You have no idea how far I've come.
Exactly. All the time, I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand. So I think what I would change is, I would change my attitude of knowing, it always works out. It does. Not in the way you think it will, not in the time you think it will, and not in the way. Like you have this vision of what it looks like. And I wish I would have been able to recognize that just let it go and like do the best I can, learn the most I can, and know it's gonna somehow be okay
and work out.
Yeah, but it's really, I know people older than me told me that back in the day, and
we didn't know what that meant though.
No, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like you're crazy.
Yeah.
But now I wish I would have gone through life like that, because I think so much of the angst I had over like, did I make the right career choice? Which job do I take? When I had, like all this stuff, or is this the right thing to move to China, or like whatever I was stressed about. I just wish I would have been like, no, it's an adventure. Everything's temporary.
Right.
So
I didn't have that wisdom either when I was younger.
I know. I don't know how. I wish I could. I don't understand.
Tell my younger self exactly that.
But I say this to younger people that are in my life, and they just look at me like I'm crazy, and I'm like.
I looked at me like I was crazy too.
And it's really hard too, because I think they look at me and think it all worked out for you, but it won't for me. And I'm thinking, no, it pretty much works out. I mean, not that it's never how you think it's going to be, never how you would think it would look, but things have a way of evening out, and we're super resilient. Yeah. I mean, we just are. But you don't know that though.
No. Until you're looking back once again.
No, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Robin, it has been so wonderful to talk to you today. I thank you so much for creating a new perspective and sharing what the world is thinking about Utah, and keeping us a little bit right of center. Keep us headed there. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.